Hello, this is Ivy Vainio. I work with American Indian Community Housing Organization, and we're here today with David Manuel from Red Lake Nation, and we're going to do an interview with him about Indigenous food sovereignty and entrepreneurship, and just have to say a little bit about the supporting grant that helped us bring this forward today. But before I do that, I just want to acknowledge that I offered some apikozagan to David for spending some time with us today and sharing his knowledge and his experience with Indigenous food and Indigenous food sovereignty with us. The grant that we received is from the First Nations Development Institute, and the program is entitled Saga Iganing Anishinaabe Food Sovereignty Initiative, and that's with the American Indian Community Housing Organization. And it's to bring Indigenous food producers together to network and also share some of their knowledge and education on this subject to the greater community and to Indigenous communities to help inspire and be creative and innovative in this work. So, without further ado, I'd like to, I'm going to be asking a couple questions to David. And so the first question is, if you could just please introduce yourself.
Yes, bonjour. My name is David Manuel. I am 59 years old, and I live and work on the Red Lake Indian Reservation.
Okay, thank you. Can you explain what Indigenous food sovereignty means to you?
Yes, I'll share what I think it means. I remember like 20 years ago, it could have been 30 years ago. I lived in Minneapolis at the time, and I went to a gathering where Winona LaDuke was speaking, and she was talking about food sovereignty back then, 30 years ago. And now I'm not sure if she coined the phrase, but the first time I ever heard it was from Winona, and that's, it has to do, I'll paraphrase it, it had to do with saying that, you know, if you are truly a sovereign nation, that means you grow your own food. And I tell you, I thought that was the silliest thing I ever heard when I first heard it. Because I really didn't, you know, I didn't know what I know now. But it just kept coming back. I kept mulling it over, and I couldn't, you know, I couldn't refute that statement. It's spot on. So that's where I, you know, I guess I, you know, started thinking about what sovereignty really meant. You know, it's so much more than wearing a T-shirt or having a card that says you're enrolled somewhere. It's so much more than that. I mean, it encompasses a lot. Of course, we're not going to go dive deeply into that conversation at the moment, but food is so important to our sovereignty, to our well-being, to our health, and especially for the children that haven't even been born yet. You know, we need to start laying some groundwork for them, so they have something to look forward to. Does that make sense? Did I answer that?
Yeah, no, that,
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your entrepreneur work with Indigenous foods, with gardening, with preserving and with selling your produce and your traditional products?
Yeah, I guess I started, it started with ricing. Um, a man by the name of Zach Early, perhaps you know Zach.
Yep.
He's the one who introduced me to ricing. He taught me how to rice. Um, and that that's some hard work, man. You know, and I mean, it's hard work. Um, and I started to develop an appreciation and respect for. And I started thinking about the people I've known that do that every year, and thought about my ancestors, and I never owned a thrasher, so we had to dance our rice, and again, it's man, a lot of work, but it really made me appreciate every single grain of rice that I ever managed to get in the bottom of a canoe and eventually onto my plate. It was such an education, and I mean, it's humbling, but it's a good uh, thing to do, to be out there on the water, uh, with the rice worms and the spiders and all that stuff too, um, and some days it's hot out there, you know. I guess that's where I really, uh, I guess was when that's what was like my beginning. I can also go back, and I remember we had a garden at home, and it wasn't a very big garden, but it was a fair sized garden, and my dad used to make me weed that garden, and I thought that was punishment, and so I'd grudgingly go out there and weed the garden, and after a while, as I got older, I started looking forward to it. I just go out there and do it, and that's what I do. I go into my garden just about every day, and I do some weeding now. And so that's kind of how I started. My dad, we had a crab apple tree in the yard. My dad would make jelly, and I was probably more in the way than anything, but I used to help, and this is he used paraffin wax, as opposed to a lid. He'd melt the paraffin wax and pour it out over the jelly after it was done.
Yep.
And that's how I remember making jelly.
Yep.
Some 50 years ago. And so that kind of brings us up to today. Currently, I learned about the sugar bush also. I was introduced to the sugar bush by Walter Porky White, who is now deceased. He was from Sugar Point, over in Leech Lake, but he lived in the cities, and he was a teacher at Heart of the Earth. And he found some land down there that had a lot of maples, and I just used to go down there and hang out, and watch, help here and there, help a little bit, try to get some free syrup from them, if I could. I don't think I ever received any, but I got to help. And then later on, in my travels with Zach again, was introduced to Jim Northrup, and we used to go over there and hang out with Jim, and that was always fun, you know. And you know, he was a crabby old bastard sometimes, but he was funny. He was a good teacher, and
Mm-hmm.
I never got no serve from him either. But I learned, you know. You know, we got to taste it and stuff, but you know, he was pretty stingy. But he was, you know, a wonderful man. We used to go visit him all the time, and we used to go, you know, uh, make sure we showed up with a 12-pack of Molson, you know, for Jim, you know, because Jim liked his beer. He had every right to enjoy his beer. That's the way I looked at it for Jim. Um, uh, and so when I moved to Red Lake, when I finally, you know, kind of put some roots down, you know, because I was a little bit nomadic in my younger years, but you know, finally I got married and settled down, and the first thing I did was I made a garden, and and my mother, when we used to visit Red Lake, she would always point out where the sugar bush was as we went driving to Panema. She would say, and down that road is where our sugar bush used to be. You know, I mean, I must have heard that a million times. And so finally, it was actually out of economic necessity that I started sugar bushing. I had like a few $100s, and I sunk it all into equipment and jars. And I turned that couple $100s into $3,000 in about a month, and you know, just from syrup sales. I hadn't even explored making candy yet. I didn't start making candy till like, you know, the year after. You know, as I got better. You know, because I remember when I first went out there, I was scratching my head, and I was saying, "What do I do?" You know, even though I had, you know, been to Porky's Sugar Bush and Jim's Sugar Bush, you know, now it was just me, and so yeah, well, you know, I think I went back home and got my drill because I forgot it, you know, and I started tapping trees and hauling sap and boiling it down and learning, you know, how to filter it, you know, appropriately, and yeah, every year you know, I got better at it, and the syrup got better, and then I started making sugar and candy. Um, I make sugar every year, kind of not to sell it, but for my own home use. It's just too labor intensive, and people don't appreciate it, to be quite honest. I do, um, but there, you know, people are just so used to going to buy, you know, a pound of sugar for a, you know, how much ever it is, you know, so cheap, you know, you know, and that's what people like to use anyway. Um, and then I don't know, it was last year that I really started um, in earnest um, selling maple sugar candy and other maple products like maple glazed almonds and yeah, almonds and walnuts and pecans. And I also had a hot version. I'd add some Carolina Reaper mash, they call it. So it's actually a fermented product, and it kind of really jazzes it up. I mean, it's hot. You know, there's no, you know, no medium or, you know, anything. It's just hot. But I found that people like it, and you know, the ones that appreciate that spice, they can't get enough of it, and I can't make it fast enough. And then I started making jellies. Um, First with fruit that either I foraged or someone foraged for me and I'd purchase it from them. Wild grapes there is no comparison to wild grape jelly and a jar of grape jelly that you buy in a grocery store. There is just no comparison. And I'll never buy another grape jelly ever again because I make it. I can't, again, that's another favorite that people love to buy.
I didn't even know that there was a wild grape.
Yeah, there is. It's a vine. It grows. It kind of creeps along the ground, and sometimes it climbs up other things, as whatever's around. Like there's up in Panema at the roundhouse there, up at the point. There's a whole bunch of them, man. They there's this oak tree there, and it just there's all up and down the oak tree, and then all on the grass under the oak tree, and then along it's a dirt road there. They grow, wild, of course, and
is it through Minnesota, like through the Midwest, or is it?
Well, I know we have it here in up here in Red Lake. People are kind of secretive about their little spots. And again, it's a lot of work, but I enjoy it. They actually sweeten up after the first frost. So that's the best time to pick them is after that first frost. I guess it just the plant in and of itself starts to produce more sugar after that first frost.
Yeah.
I got choke cherries in my yard, so I don't even got to go very far to pick choke cherries. And let's see what else. And I love, and then crab apple is another one of my favorites. We have there's people that have had crab apples and planted and in their yards, and there's kind of like a race for the crab apples. One year I picked that whole tree clean before anyone else could get to it. It sounds awful, but man, I love crab apple jelly, and it also is a good seller. And then after the berry season passes, I purchase juices from a co-op here in town called Harmony Foods Co-op, and I make kind of what I call niche jellies, because like pomegranate. I'll make pomegranate jelly. I'll make tangerine jelly out of. They have a tangerine juice there. I've never seen it in any other store, and I just run it through a filter. I take out the pulp. If there is any pulp, there is in the tangerine juice. So I'll just remove the pulp and try to, create a nice translucent tangerine jelly, which is very unique. I've made watermelon jelly before, and that's a challenge. I only got one customer for my watermelon jelly, a loyal customer, Adrian Liberty is his name. You won't mind me saying that. He loves it. He's always pestering me to make more. And let's see what else. I'll make cranberry and blueberry, a mango, a peach mango. I probably made about 13 different kinds of jelly. I'm going to try and pare it down though, because it just is a lot of work. And I just make this at home. I have a cottage food producer license. But now, I got offered a job, and that's what I've been doing today. Is I've been making jelly for the Red Lake Nation food brand, and they make jellies out of the fruits harvested right here on the reservation, and they make high bush cranberry jelly, choke cherry. There's a couple other ones. I haven't made them all yet, so I can't just rattle them off right. Right. There's a hawthorn jelly. I haven't made that yet. And then they also make syrups as well out of these foraged fruits here on the Red Lake Reservation.
David, sorry to interrupt, can you share how that connection was made? Like, did you approach them, or did Red Lake Nation Foods reach out to you?
Well, my boss, his name is Donovan Sather, and he's also a customer of mine as well. He's bought my jellies before, and he is also the I don't know what exactly his position is, but he runs the show over at Ogaconning, which oversees some of Red Lake's business, like the fishery, the Red Lake Foods, the IGA grocery store, and the convenience store as well, down by the reservation line by the casino. And we used to ship our berries down to a place in McGregor. It was called Nostalgia was the name of the company, and they were a food production place. They did wild rice, all kinds of stuff, but they manufactured our jellies for us down there, and then they'd ship them back, and then people would put the Red Lake Nation Foods label on it, and then it would go to different places for sale. But they went out of business here last year, and what they did was they purchased their manufacturing equipment for the jellies, and so we're instead of outsourcing that, it's created one job so far, and that would be me. And because of my experience in making jellies and having a little bit of a background in doing it, at least in small batches, Donovan offered me a job. And so it's not like full-time, but it's a couple days a week. And right now I'm being trained in by the cook who worked for Nostalgia, and his name is Mike Burr, and he's a really knowledgeable man. He's been doing that for about 20 years now, and so he like today we were making cranberry jelly. We're half done. We made about 15 cases, 8-ounce. I think they're 10-ounce jars, 12 jars to a case, and then we're going to do the same thing this afternoon. So it's going to make for kind of a long day, but it's part of my training. And then I just accepted a position back where I used to work, Gittiganake. I took a little break from there, and now I'm going back as the farm manager. And so that, between those two jobs, I have full-time employment. So it was through my experience selling my own jellies, and Donovan really liked my jellies. And I make a spicy one as well that he loves to use as for barbecue. He'll brush it on his chicken or whatever the heck he's making, pork chops, I don't know what. But that's what he uses on my hot jellies for. He also, purchases my other my other jellies as well, or has in the past. And that's, he called me up here, I don't know, about a month ago, and offered me, that job. And I said, well, what the heck? Yeah, why not?
Yeah. We're kind of running out of time a little bit, but I have two more questions if I could. And
Okay.
I'm very thankful that you're sharing all this with us. Hearing you talk about Sugar Bush and Jim Northrup, and that really touches me, because I've been out at Jim Northrup's Sugar Bush quite a few times, and it just brought back some memories and all of that. So thank you, Miigwech. I have two more questions, and one is, what is the reason that you do all of this? And the second one is, if there is a food policy change or challenge that you've experienced, what are your thoughts on solutions to that challenge or that barrier?
Okay. Well, to answer your first question is, I don't know. I don't know. I just gravitated towards foods. I don't know, a long time ago. I used to, I've done a lot of different things, for work, but I always fell back on being a cook, like in the winter months, because I used to be a carpenter, I used to be a roofer, but sometimes, there was work slowdowns, and economic issues going on, but I could always go get a job as being a cook. And then when I moved up here to the reservation, jobs are hard to come by around here. You have to, it's just tough. There's about 40% unemployment here in Red Lake. And so a lot, my, going out racing and doing the Sugar Bush was out of financial necessity. And I would make a good product. I really, really tried to do good, have a good quality product. And as a result, I have a pretty loyal customer base. It's not a day that goes by that I don't get some sort of inquiry to, what am I up to? Are you making anything? What do you got for sale? And that makes me feel really, makes me feel good, that I can put out a quality product, organic, product, and make people happy, and get a decent price, for it as well. And again, it's a lot of work. Making jellies is, today it's hot, man. And when I'm at home, it's usually a 15-hour day of, making 4 or 5 batches of jelly. As far as policy goes, I really don't know how to answer that, other than I would like to see, tribes, reservations, really double down on their efforts to create some food sovereignty. It's tough, but we need to make that happen. There's no reason why we can't raise our own beef, our own chickens, and grow our own produce, for the respective nations, and also for to enter the market, and be a competitor, and create jobs and opportunity, where there was none before. That's what I really believe needs to happen, just to address some economic opportunity, and create some of that food sovereignty in our own backyard. We have here in Red Lake, we have the fishery, that we're very, very proud of. It provides jobs, and they get a good dollar. They get a decent price for their walleye, even though, excuse me, Canada, is our number one competitor. And their walleye is cheaper, but ours tastes better. That's, I'm biased. I'll admit it. So I believe Red Cliff also has a fish, being on that they're on Lake Superior, and I believe Bad River does too. I've met some fishermen from both places over there. This one guy, he gave me a whole cooler of lake trout. He said he can't even eat fish anymore. He's just sick of fish. He gave me a whole cooler full. I was over there for a powwow a couple years ago. I can't remember. They live up on Birch Hill, but I can't for the life of me remember his name right at the moment. I don't know that, but yeah, I want Native nations to start addressing their food sovereignty, food security.
Yeah, miigwech. I do have one small follow-up question, and then I'll let you get back to work. Is when you talked about your driving with your mom and your mom said, oh, down that road is where we had our sugar bush. Is that where you sugar bush today? And if not, do you go to that space and just be in that space?
I go there and I didn't sugar bush there this year. This year I was hired by a couple of different tribal programs and also the Indian Center of Bemidji. They all three hired me to train their staff into doing the sugar bush. So I kind of had it centrally located down here in Redby. But I'm gonna go back there next year. I missed it, and for two reasons. Because it is my ancestral sugar bush, and there's also bigger trees, more trees than the sugar bush that I mean, it was okay. There was nothing wrong with it at all, but I miss it. Yeah, I'm going back there.
Good, good. And you must have feel that connection to your mother in that space.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking, I mean, it's like, I don't want to, sound, well, it's like walking in the footsteps of my ancestors. I don't know, how long. I just had to hang up with my boss.
Oh,
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'll call him back. Yeah, I mean, there's that connection there. I don't know how to describe it, but it feels good. That I know that I'm doing what my ancestors did. So
right. Yeah. Well, I'm so thankful for this moment with you today. And I'm hoping that we can do this again at some point because you have so much knowledge and there's some questions that I wasn't able to ask you. And so if you're open to that, that'd be great. And then if there's any last thing that you want to share with whoever is going to be watching this.
yeah. Go out there and start a garden. It's good for you. It's something it's you're not going to grow everything it's not going to last year round, but it's just a good thing to do. It's good exercise, and you get better at it each year. There's challenges, but challenges are okay. They're lessons.
Yeah, I find that it's healing. Arnie and I started a garden this year, and there's some stressful times with work and with other things, community organizing and all that kind of stuff. And when I'm in the garden, all that goes away.
Yes.
And I just feel that it brings healing to us, And so I'm very thankful for the plants and the opportunity and the access for us to do that. Because I know not everybody has access to do it because they don't have the land, they don't have the money, they don't have the things that they need to do what they want to do. And so there's some issues there. But we could talk about that for hours. But so I just want to thank you again, Miigwech, and hopefully we can do this again.
All right. I look forward to it.
Yes. All right. Take care and be well. And best wishes in all that you do.
Miigwech, Ivy.
Yeah.
Good to talk with you.
You too. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.